That's another statement worth memorizing. Take 3 things from it and keep it in mind as we study the Book of Mormon this year. Number 1, he called it the most correct of any book on earth. And most is relative, not absolute. So again, back to Moroni's admission, if there are faults, well, they're the faults of men. Can we work through those? But it is the most correct book. It was inspired of God. It was written by prophets. It was abridged by prophets. It was passed down by prophets. It was translated by the prophet. And it has been interpreted by prophets ever since. Oh, the prophetic hand that has been on this book from the very beginning is something that no other text can claim. So the most correct. The second thing to keep in mind, he called it the keystone of our religion. And when I was a youth and I'd see these object lessons where you put all the stones together into an arch and it's the keystone that's the most important one. But I remember them describing this saying, because if you take the keystone out, then the arch crumbles. And as a punk teenager, I would always think to myself, well, wouldn't the arch crumble no matter which stone you took out? I mean, you can take out one of these side ones, it's not going to like float in the air. Every single one of them is important, right? And since then, I've thought more about it and realized, yeah, I was right. All of the keys, or excuse me, all of the stones are important. Then what makes the keystone so key? Well, in essence, it's the one that bears the most weight and then distributes that weight throughout the rest of the arch. So yes, every stone is important. Every principle of the gospel of Jesus Christ, everything we have in the restoration needs to be there to complete the whole. But what is the load-bearing stone of it all? And that's the Book of Mormon. If that, President Benson said it's the keystone of the gospel, it's the keystone of our testimony, it's the keystone of our witness of Jesus Christ, it bears weight. And especially when people are attacking the church, that's why they try so hard to dislodge the Book of Mormon. Because if that one falls, then what do we have to? What will bear the weight of the restoration? I actually got an email from an old student of mine years after I taught him. He was in a very demanding graduate program at a prestigious university back east. And he sent me a long email full of his questions and concerns. Well, as I've often warned my students, grad school is often where faith goes to die. And his seemed to be dying. They specialize in the deconstruction of previous worldviews, and his was not just being deconstructed, it was being destroyed. And he worried about that. And so he reached out with desperation and just, what about this? And I don't understand that. And it was just this slew of questions. But the part that struck me strongest was at the end of his email when he said, all of this might sound final. As if to say, it might, you read this and you get a sense that I'm on my way out, that I can't reconcile all these things, and so forget it, I'm leaving. But he said, all of this may sound final, but it isn't. And then he explained why in a single sentence. The Book of Mormon has quite the hold on me. And that statement from that former student of mine has stuck with me ever since. The Book of Mormon has quite the hold on me. It was still functioning as keystone. And though so many rocks had been reduced to rubble, somehow that part of his testimony was still bearing weight and still holding it up. There to me is, if we can, I've talked, my students care less about arch construction than they do about rock climbing. There's some amazing rock climbing places around BYU, and I've asked them, take the keystone comment and translate it, interpret it in terms of rock climbing. And we've talked about anchor bolts that are sunk into the stone, and if you can clip into those, you're not going to fall. Well, actually, I take that back. You might fall, but you won't fall all the way back to the ground. That anchor will hold you. And as you're going free climbing beyond the anchor bolt, in search of the next one, that's when we're moving forward into the unknown. Places I don't yet understand, things I haven't wrapped my head and heart around yet. And there's a danger there, but there's also the exhilaration of new exploration and reaching heights you've never been. That's part of growing up in God too. Think about all the anchor bolts you have in a lifetime of living the gospel. And if you slip, if you fall, which of those anchor bolts will hold you? The Book of Mormon as the keystone, as the chief anchor, is one that we need to be anchored to. You with me? Go out and rock climb, and hopefully this will start to make sense. The third and final aspect of that Joseph Smith quote I want to focus on is when he said that we get nearer to God by abiding by its precepts than by any other book. Notice he said it's abiding by its precepts, not just having the book, not just studying the book, but living what it teaches. The Book of Mormon is thus pointing beyond itself to a particular lifestyle known as Christian discipleship. And it's by following the example of Jesus Christ that everything changes. The Book of Mormon is pointing us in his direction. It's not pointing us back at itself. We'll see that repeatedly as we study the text. In fact, I looked up in the 1828 Webster's Dictionary. It's so serendipitous that the first American dictionary, written by Noah Webster, came out in 2 years before the Book of Mormon emerged. So you want to see what the words meant. We don't have a dictionary of Reformed Egyptian, but you want to see the translation and what it meant in Joseph Smith's mind. Now here from Joseph's statement, when he refers to precepts, this is how Noah Webster defined precepts. Any commandment or order intended as an authoritative rule of action, but applied particularly to commands respecting moral conduct. A more modern definition reads, a general rule intended to regulate behavior or thought. So that's what we're looking for in the Book of Mormon. How do I abide its precepts, its general rules of morality? How does the Book of Mormon teach me to think? How does the Book of Mormon teach me to behave? Because if I will live a Book of Mormon life,